You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday the 31st of August. Deportations at last for 12 illegal students and stayovers. This Saturday, squatters could have their rights taken away. A report from Griffin, MEP. Romney accepts presidential nomination in Tampa. US Chief of Staff states that sanctions against Iran should be given a chance. Thought for the day, entertaining our colonisers. And finally, a word on Star Wars. UK News. 7 illegal immigrants who applied to be students in Britain and abused their student visas have been sent home. The would-be students who applied for the soft option of student visas, which are generally used to take jobs from the Brits, were caught by the border agency at a linen company in Chelmsford, named as Chelmsford Linen Company. While the overstaying students were arrested, another 5 were discovered who had overstayed their visas. All 12 were sent back to Pakistan, Bangladesh, India and Sri Lanka. Mark Gear from the UK Border Agency in the east of England said, "Our message to those people with no right to be in the UK is that they must leave." One World Date reporter commented, "It is the right move in removing all foreign students from Britain because Britain is a haven for criminal activity from those whose cultures have thrived by it." Less than 1 week before the raid by the border agency, 11 more illegals who had overstayed their visas were deported back to Asia after a polishing and metal firm were caught giving British jobs to overstayers in the Midlands. Once again, according to a local source in one northern town, the police are getting more hard line with illegals on the streets, and it really is a question of actually catching up with a large number of illegal immigrants in this country. This is what we should be doing, reporting them and removing them. It is our job to undo the rope from around the neck of Britain placed there by the Marxists. Squatters who invade people's homes and private property may soon have the tables turned on them. The squatters, who are often illegal immigrants who take over UK citizens' homes either while they are away or before occupation, could face a jail term of up to 6 months in prison. The squatters' rights are to be thrown in the bin where it belongs, along with the liberal communist idea, if nobody lives there, it's yours. This can apparently be classed as legal theft by fine. According to the Ministry of Justice guidance issued to law enforcement agencies, the new offence will make it more difficult for trespassers to assert they have rights in respect of residential buildings because their occupation of the building will be a criminal act. It tells officers not to be deterred if they see a squatter's rights notice on the door, as the police have lawful authority under Section 17 of PACE, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, to enter the property to make an arrest. A World Date writer comments, "In fact, they should not serve any time in our prisons at all, but be deported immediately. The cost of keeping them in prison for 6 months equates with a fare back to their country of origin." 1 in 5 local councils have wiped out free parking in the last year. Motorists, who are at the forefront of rises in motoring such as petrol prices, oil and insurance cover, are struck again. Apparently the number of parking attendants has risen around 6% in the last year, thus the need to charge the motorists to cover the cost. Now we have the Euro News with Griffin, MEP, in which he talks about the legal bias towards the ethnic community in the UK and the hard line towards our own Indigenous people.
The news that Northern Ireland veteran Simon Parkes has been jailed for 4 months for tying a pig's head to the railings of a mosque in Cheltenham has angered millions of people this week, including me. Not because it's an action of which I approve, because I don't. I like pigs and think they're entitled to respect even when dead. Furthermore, it was a rather gruesome piece of petty tribalism aimed at the wrong target. Protests against mosques should be directed not against Muslims, but against the anti-British council leaders and planning departments that allow the continued spread of these symbols and powerhouses of Islamic imperialism. And the ones to blame for the fact that immigrant remembrance property desecrators were only fined £50, which was the injustice that so angered Mr. Parkes, are not Muslims in Cheltenham, or anywhere else for that matter, but the magistrates who handed out such a pathetic slap on the wrist to the Islamist scum who insulted our war heroes. I also blame the police officers, who could have taken note of the fact that Simon Parkes' action, while foolish, hurt absolutely no one, and was a natural reaction from a victim of untreated post-traumatic combat stress. As such, they could and should have put common sense and humanity before jobs with efficiency. Evidence can be lost. Leads can be missed. The police do it often enough when our people are victimised by ethnic criminals. But as we know, humanity and common sense are all too rare among the politically correct, indoctrinated college boys who infest today's police services. So they will have been falling over themselves to track down Mr. Parks and to subject him to the bullying pressure of interrogations. No doubt this confused and vulnerable man's confession will have been extracted with the help of the old good cop, bad cop routine, with one berating and threatening him, while the other posed as a friend. I don't agree with what you did, the ex-soldier would have been told by the PC creep pretending to be on his side, but I can understand how angry you were when you saw them burning poppies and walking free from court. And the judge will understand too, so if you plead guilty, that'll be taken into account, and you'll just get a fine as well. That's fair enough, isn't it? So just sign the statement and you can go home. And because he was trusting and naive enough to believe the police lies, Simon Parks is now serving a 4-month term in prison, while the Muslim poppy burners again have a good old laugh about the self-hating, anti-British perversion of our so-called legal system. It makes me very angry, and it's typical of the sort of injustice that prompted me to spend the early mornings of my holiday, while Jackie was having a well-earned lie-in, working on my laptop and writing the definitive guide for the victims of politically motivated police harassment and arrest. Entitled Arrested, What You Need to Know to Walk Free, it's a comprehensive practical manual that is not just for hurt and angry ex-servicemen or political activists. In today's crazy Britain, you don't have to be one of us troublemakers to end up on the wrong side of the anti-British law. You could offer an ethnic workmate the wrong-coloured jelly baby. You could make an innocent reference to a black look. Or you could have a minor traffic accident with an enricher who then plays the race card. These are the sort of incidents that can happen to any member of our Indigenous community, which is why I hope that you will both read and pass on my Arrested guide when it appears online shortly, once 2 sympathetic solicitors have made a few final technical improvements. I believe that such practical measures to help resist the growing intolerance of the liberal police state are an increasingly important part of our fight for freedom. I hope you agree, and would particularly welcome your thoughts on this. Moving on to a different aspect of the same liberal intolerance, and further to my comments on the thoroughly totalitarian mixed master race overtones of the Olympics opening and closing ceremonies, I was amused to come across another little example of today's Goebbels-like indoctrination in a small village in southern France. The culprit this time is the European Union, a network of institutions whose innate and all-encompassing totalitarianism will already be all too familiar to most listeners. In a tourist information centre in a mountain gorge in Haute-Provence, I picked up a leaflet advertising a special exhibition about Neanderthal man, and women, I expect, in a nearby museum of prehistory. Neanderthals were, the leaflet and exhibition proclaim, the first citizens of Europe. Rather like the Mormon habit of declaring long-dead ancestors posthumously baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, so the Council of Europe and its tame archaeologists have skipped back 35,000 years to award scattered bands of Stone Age bison-eating humanoids honorary European citizenship. Mind you, perhaps we should be grateful that Neanderthals are extinct. If a tribe were to turn up alive and well in a remote corner of Surrey, it wouldn't only give bureaucrats in Brussels a fresh opportunity to spend our taxes. The BBC would also go into overdrive, demanding a special positive discrimination scheme to make up for 35,000 years of racist neglect and oppression. As it is, the designers of the posters promoting the exhibition have done what they can to recruit the Neanderthals to their quest for the greater Europe. On the cave wall, behind the first European man, is a not-so-subtle cave painting of a circle of European stars. Can't these people ever give it a rest? No, of course they can't, because, like all totalitarianisms, Europhilia is at its rotten core a religious impulse, and people in the grip of religious fervour invariably suffer from a corresponding lack of common sense and proportion. They're not motivated by a rational analysis of the real world, but by a crazed and relentless utopianism. That's why they'll still be commissioning exhibitions designed to indoctrinate the stubbornly nationalistic masses and our children, even when those masses are surging through the streets of every city in the captive nations of Europe, demanding an end to such tax-gobbling arrogance, burning EU flags, and threatening to hang Eurocrats from lampposts. Totalitarians, regardless of hue, always attempt to use history, just as they use giant sporting events, but they're incapable of learning from it. That is why, sooner rather than later, they end up making terrible mistakes, and why, in a future that most of us will live to see, the whole EU fantasy will be as extinct as the Neanderthals, and that blue and gold-starred rag will not be seen anywhere except in a Brussels-based museum of utopian follies.
Thank you, Nick, once again for a very informative talk. World News. In America, Mitt Romney has accepted the Republican nomination to run for President of the USA. Mr Romney accepted the challenge and started, as he means to go on, by releasing a barrage of attacks on Barack Obama. He criticised Obama for attacking success and said that the voters weren't better off today than they were 4 years ago. The arena in which the Republican meeting was held was packed out in Tampa, Florida, with standing ovations and huge applause for the governor. A senior military official in the United States has commented that an attack on Iran by Israel would not be enough to stop their nuclear program. The chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, Martin Dempsey, claims that sanctions should be allowed to have enough time to succeed in the matter. One US military advisor said that the involvement in Iran would trap NATO into action in Syria. Thought for the day: entertaining our colonisers. It had to come, didn't it? Apart from Al Jazeera and the multitude of Pakistani, Bangladeshi-based channels, we now have the Coro of Islam. The Indians have always laughed at themselves, and the Jewish jokes are usually without parallel and are hilarious. But one doesn't associate a Muslim with humour, I'm afraid. That is the way it is, and this programme has proved that whilst it appeals to over 3 million people, of whose ethnicity I do not know, there are some Muslims amongst us who disapprove strongly of the humour of this show. This is why the Muslim population does not equate with humour in any sense or form, because there is usually a large number of upset from Slough who register their disapproval of apparently taking the name of Islam and Muhammad in vain. Although how you can take a paedophile from the desert 800 years ago and follow his often disastrous and harsh rules and regs, forcibly converting millions, and still remain a religion of peace and humour, I really don't know. The one thing from the Islamic perception would be the rather westernised household, but then they are living in the West and depicted by the BBC as such. They are deemed to be funny. That is poking fun at us, not them. This is the BBC saying that Citizen Khan is as near to families in the UK that the Muslims want to get, and isn't it amusing? In an article by Saira Khan, no relation, she exhorts the series and says that the average Muslim is sick and tired of being associated with terrorism and demonstrations. Well, I can understand that, because they usually are just that and more. She's raised the question of the recession having hit Muslim families hard. Really? She's come up with the old cherry, excuse the expression, of in some northern mill towns there are groups of Muslim men who have been grooming vulnerable white girls for sex. Oh dear. Oh very dear. Miss Khan has just made my day. 3 things here. First, northern mill towns makes it sound like hell on earth, and also diminishes the problem to a few areas. Vulnerable makes the girls look up for it or half-witted, and groups of Muslim men seem an understatement. Miss Khan thinks of the recession, the problem of grooming, and also the risk in the same northern towns of the NHS costs of looking after the vast number of idiots born to first cousins who seem to bed each other in arranged marriages, is something that a new programme like Citizen Khan would obviate in our eyes and lift into the humour stakes. She's reckoning without the gladiatorial side of the British nature. Big Brother, ghastly freaks of nature, medical freaks, mental freaks, and just stupid people thinking they are worth so much more, do it for us mateys, plus vast quantities of booze, and I cannot see Mr Khan competing on that level. Ms Khan believes that this sitcom, which is funny, is just what the British population need to really tell them that is what a Muslim family life is about. The BBC, after years of drumming it home to us that Muslims form a major part in some sort of multicultural dream state and must be respected and feared outside their segregated enclaves, are now in the humanising and humorous format, mainly because certain habits, endemic in those enclaves for years, are reaching the public eyes and ears. In your dreams. Muslim family life is about, for the most part, living your religion without any thought for anyone else. making money and breeding. And I must not lose track of the colonisation part of it, the sectarian and class structure of Muslim life, which is a minefield on its own. In fact, it doesn't matter how funny the BBC try to make these people, they are not funny. Just dangerous, and they are invaders in our country. They're also in our government, our shops, our councils, our schools, our universities, our think tanks, our media, our TV and our streets. Roll out the Daleks, BBC, and quickly. I feel the need to annihilate. Did I just say that? But the sad fact remains, if we Brits can laugh at gormless Brits, then we can laugh at gormless Pakistanis. And finally, a Pooch has come to the rescue of Obi-Wan Kenobi. In an American town, a Star Wars show was being performed in a street performance by amateur entertainers. When a dog watched a battle scene with Obi-Wan v Darth Vader, the dog sprung into action. Darth Vader was jumped on and dropped his lightsaber, following a wrestling match around the floor. The onlookers watched in amazement as Darth managed to escape the dog back into his cave. The dog wandered off with a smile on its face, obviously thinking, now wait for it, may the Pooch be with you. Oh dear. You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart, and I and the team at World at 8 and Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and safe weekend.